Late afternoon fell like velvet, draped in pale gold across the whispering pine-covered hills of the Aldrich Canine Reserve, a fortress-like facility nestled deep in the wilds of Montana. The wind rustled gently through the perimeter fencing, which encased rows of steel kennels. Here, dogs weren't just trained, they were forged with the discipline of soldiers, swift, sharp, obedient, unwavering. But at the end of the dirt path, silent and almost forgotten by the world, sat Kennel 12, completely isolated. New staff were warned bluntly, don't go near it, ever. That was Rex's kennel. Rex, a towering German shepherd, thick-coated in smoke and silver, with eyes like cold iron at midnight. Rex didn't bark, he growled. He didn't threaten, he attacked. Those who entered his space left marks behind. 3 handlers had tried. One left with a torn shoulder, another with cracked ribs. The third never came back. And yet, General Aldrich, former U.S. Army commander, a legend of the Gulf War, refused to put Rex down. No tranquilizers, no transfer, no explanation. Every afternoon, he stood in front of Kennel 12 in silence, like some personal ritual, unspoken and unbroken. Whispers spread. Then someone from the cleaning crew mentioned a photo on the general's office shelf. A boy sat on a wooden step, cradling a German shepherd in his arms. Time had faded the image, but the caption beneath remained. Ian Sargent, 1972. The truth behind that photo was almost forgotten, buried in years and silence. In 1972, Aldrich was just 13. His family was poor, tucked away in rural Nebraska. His father was a carpenter, his mother chronically ill. The only warmth in that house came from Sargent, a stray German shepherd puppy he'd rescued from a junkyard. They grew up together. When Aldrich ate, Sargent sat beside him. When he slept, the dog curled at his feet. Sargent wasn't just a pet. He was the only thing in Aldrich's childhood that didn't leave or hurt him. Then his mother died. His father turned to whiskey. One snowy night, in a drunken rage, the old man stormed out, flinging open the backyard gate. Sargent ran. They searched for 3 days. On the 4th, they found him at the forest's edge, frozen, curled up, still facing home. Aldrich never cried, but something inside him closed forever. He joined the military, climbed the ranks, commanded canine units in war, but never owned another dog. Until Rex. Rex came on a summer afternoon, transferred from a defunct military program. His walk, his eyes, even the scar across his muzzle. It was like Sargent had come back, not in body, but in essence, a ghost in fur and breath. Aldrich knew Rex would never be easy, but some wounds don't need to be fixed. They need to be understood. So one autumn morning, Aldrich stepped into the gravel yard, boots cold and steady, and issued his command. $1 million to anyone who can make Rex trust people again. Not just obedience. He must be gentle. He must trust. No one laughed, because they all knew this wasn't about money. This was about memory, and a love he once lost, but could never forget. On the other side of General Aldrich's world, far from pine hills and steel gates, Elena drifted quietly through the forgotten edges of the city. 13 years old, thin as winter branches, she moved like a shadow across pavement no one cared to look at. No one asked her name. No one remembered her face. She was just a blur in the background. A person the world had stopped noticing. By day, she weaved through intersections, wiping windshields at red lights, her hand reaching out to eyes that never met hers. No thank yous. No curses either. Just cold indifference. And somehow, that hurt more. At night, she curled beneath ledges and awnings, wrapped in a jacket found in a dumpster, her back against brick that never held warmth. Elena used to talk a lot. When she was little, she told stories to her dolls, to street lamps, to the pieces of moonlight scattered on a mildewed floor. But as she grew, her voice shrank, not from fear, but because the world had stopped listening, so she learned to survive in silence. She didn't remember her parents clearly, just fragments, a soft jacket that smelled like cinnamon, someone's hand smoothing her hair, a lullaby drifting between sleep and wakefulness. All of it had long been exchanged for cold nights and a stomach that forgot what full felt like. That day, she crouched beside a shuttered convenience store's parking lot, knees tucked beneath her. A frayed scarf hung around her neck. Nearby, 2 delivery drivers leaned on their truck, talking between drags of cigarettes. Elena didn't look up, but she listened. That old general out in Montana's lost it. Yeah, offering $1 million to anyone who can tame some broken military dog. Not just any dog, this one tore a man's arm open. You'd have to be crazy to go near it. Elena didn't move. But each word struck something inside her. A dog no one could approach. A challenge no one believed in. And suddenly, with no reason she could name, she understood it. That night, beneath a rusted gas station awning, she didn't think about food or cold. She thought about that dog, the one locked away, feared, labeled beyond help, and in her chest a quiet voice stirred. Maybe he needs someone like me. Before the sun rose, Elena was already up. No address, no map, just a name she'd heard. Aldridge Canine Reserve, somewhere far beyond the highways. She tied her frayed shoes with scraps of rope, filled a plastic bottle with water, and started walking. The city yawned sleepily behind her. Fog drifted under bridges. Elena moved through alleyways, climbed fences, crossed train tracks, following nothing but instinct. She paused to ask directions. Some shrugged, some laughed. One man just pointed toward the fields. Way out there, kid. Don't waste your time. But she didn't stop. By noon, the pavement gave way to cracked earth and dry grass. The sun burned overhead, blistering her worn feet inside torn sneakers. Once, she nearly stepped on a snake. Twice, she almost turned back. But something inside kept pushing. Steady, unspoken hope. As evening approached, the sky dimmed to gray. And then, at last, she saw it. A tall wooden gate. Iron bars towering, silent cameras perched above. Beyond it, rolling hills, distant rooftops. She stepped closer, placed her hand on the cold metal gate, pressed her forehead against it, and whispered, "I made it." Elena stood in front of the great gate for a long while, not knocking, not calling out. She just stood there, silent, small, like a grain of sand in an ocean of mountains. Part of her was too tired to move, but the other part didn't yet know what to say if someone opened the door. Ahead of her was the Aldridge Canine Reserve, a name she'd only heard in passing, and yet she'd arrived. No guide, no map, no one leading the way. Every step had been a choice. Every step had meant she still believed in something. As dusk painted the gravel in streaks of amber and gray, Elena stepped back from the gate and found a spot by the edge of the fence. She sat down, her soft, nearly empty backpack serving as a pillow. She pulled her coat tighter around her knees, arms wrapped around herself like rope. No cars passed, no voices, only wind sighing through the wood and metal. And still, she waited, because sometimes waiting is all a heart can do. That night she slept there, and the next day she was still there. She stood, brushed dirt from her pants, retied her shoes, and waited. She didn't knock. She didn't plead. She just existed, as if that alone might be enough to be heard. By noon, a truck rolled through the main path. A security guard stepped out from the booth and narrowed his eyes. "What are you doing here, kid?" Elena replied calmly, almost quietly, "I heard about the dog. I want to try." He let out a sharp laugh, not mocking, just surprised. "Rex, that dog will tear you apart before you can say hello." He turned and walked off. No gate opened, no questions asked. But Elena didn't leave. That night, she lay beside a tree near the gate, listening to distant barking and wind rushing through stone. Another long, cold night. By the third morning, she stood again. Her face was smudged with dirt, her hair tangled, eyes shadowed. But her gaze remained clear, persistent but never desperate, steady but never demanding. A groundskeeper walked past and quietly left her half a sandwich. He didn't speak. Elena nodded in thanks and ate each bite as if afraid it might vanish. By the fourth morning, something shifted. An older guard, quieter than the others, stood watching her for a while. Then he lifted his radio. "Sir, it's still the girl. Comes every day, says she wants to meet Rex." Static hummed. Then a low voice answered, "I'll be there in 10. Elena didn't know who was coming, but she wasn't afraid. She didn't run. She didn't smile. She just waited, like she had been all her life. Elena was standing there when he arrived. No one had to say his name. They didn't need to. The upright posture, the deliberate stride, and the gaze that seemed to weigh the air itself. It was Aldrich. He didn't wear a uniform, but the dark charcoal coat and scuffed military boots still made him look like he'd just walked out of formation. His hair was stark white, slicked back. His face held no expression, but his eyes carried something far heavier, like a quiet storm of years too long endured. Elena didn't move. He stopped several feet away. The guard behind him stepped back, leaving just the two of them, one old, one young, facing each other in a silence far louder than words. "You're the one who's been waiting?" The question was deep, low, without judgment, just fact. Elena nodded, "Yes." "Why?" Her voice was soft but steady. "I heard no one could get close to Rex. Maybe that's why." "I should try." Aldrich didn't reply right away. A breeze stirred his coat, and for a moment his eyes drifted, not toward the trees, but into something older, farther away. "Rex isn't safe," he said. "I know," Elena answered, not backing away. He studied her a moment longer, as if weighing something far beyond her size. "You think you can help him?" "No," she said. "I don't think I'll fix him. I just think maybe he doesn't need fixing. Maybe he just needs someone who stays." The silence that followed was dense, almost tangible. But it wasn't tense. It was the kind of silence that made people breathe slower. At last, Aldrich took off his sunglasses, revealing eyes that had seen more loss than most people could imagine. He turned to glance toward Canal 12, where Rex was still chained, growling even at the wind. Then he turned back to the girl. "Be here at sunrise," he said after a long pause. "You'll have one chance, not because I believe you can, but because something tells me I have to let you try." Elena didn't thank him. She just nodded, a firm, quiet nod that said everything her life had taught her. "This is the moment, and I am ready." Elena was there before the sun had fully risen. The grass beneath her shoes was damp with dew, and the morning air cut through her coat like icy thread. Trainers were already assembling in the yard, each handling quiet tasks. No chatter, no laughter. The air was tight, still, as if even the sky was holding its breath. In the far corner, one of them approached Kennel 12. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for a thick, steel-braided tether, the kind used only for high-risk military dogs. Rex hadn't been allowed out since the last attack. General Aldrich stood at the edge of the yard, arms folded tightly, gaze sharp as forged iron. His face revealed nothing, but his posture held a tension so taut it felt like the world might snap. Rex emerged like a storm trapped in fur, rippling muscle, flame-lit eyes. The moment the gate opened, he let out a deep growl, a sound so low and thunderous it seemed to rattle the ground beneath their feet. Elena didn't blink. She stepped forward, stopping just outside the tether's reach. She didn't speak. She didn't raise her hands. She simply knelt. She lowered herself to the ground, her knees pressing gently into the dirt, hands resting quietly in her lap. No expression, no challenge, no fear, just presence. Rex saw her. He pulled violently against the chain, roared again, and lunged, the leash catching tight, the metal clinking with a sharp clang. Dust rose in clouds around his paws. But Elena didn't flinch. He circled, snarled, watching her with every step. She stayed still, her eyes never locking directly onto his, as if granting him space to see without feeling threatened. Time warped. 5 minutes, 10, then more. On the edge of the yard, murmurs stirred. We should pull her out. Wait, look at Aldridge. The general hadn't moved, but his jaw had unclenched. Then, Rex stopped. He didn't growl, didn't pull. He stood there, breathing hard, tongue slightly out, eyes fixed on the small girl in the dirt. And Elena? She slowly reached into her hoodie and pulled out half a broken granola bar, unwrapped it gently, and placed it on the ground in front of her. Then she withdrew her hand. No commands, no tricks, just permission, just an invitation, silent, soft, and open. Rex stared at the granola bar on the ground. A small, ordinary thing, but in that moment it became something else. Not food, but a promise. No one forcing him, no commands, only silence, and a girl who waited. Elena didn't move. Her eyes didn't meet his directly, just off to the side, gentle, soft, as if saying, "I'm not here to take. I'm just here." Rex took a step. The whole yard held its breath. Another step, slow, cautious, as if every inch forward was its own decision. The chain tightened, then loosened. Every move he made seemed to tighten Aldrich's posture beneath his coat. The general didn't blink. Rex lowered his head, sniffed the granola bar. No growl, no snap, just a quiet inhale. And then he took it, carefully, as if afraid to break something fragile. Elena dipped her head, not in victory, but in humility, in gratitude. Rex sat. No one told him to, but he did, as if, for the first time, he'd met someone who didn't want to change him, just to be with him. Elena raised her gaze, slowly meeting his eyes. No fear, no demand. Only one thing, absolute gentleness. With care, she lifted her hand. It trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. Then she placed it softly atop Rex's head, stroking once, a touch light as wind over spring grass. And Rex closed his eyes. The yard fell completely silent. A handler dropped his clipboard. Someone whispered, "Did you see that?" as if they'd just witnessed a miracle too fragile to name. Across the yard, Aldrich stood frozen. His breath grew heavier, chest slowly sinking, like a memory had just stirred awake. His hand, firm just moments ago, slackened, then clenched again. No one saw the redness in his eyes, because he turned away. As Rex leaned against Elena, the entire yard froze. No one spoke, no one dared. The dog, once called unreachable, now rested beside a nameless girl, his head on her knee, as if that was where he'd always belonged. General Aldrich walked slowly forward, each step crunched against the gravel like punctuation. The guards stood taller. The trainers exchanged glances, breath held. But Elena didn't turn around. She sat still, one hand resting on Rex's head, her gaze fixed softly on some faraway point in the morning light. Aldrich stopped a few feet in front of her. His shadow stretched long across the ground. "You did it," he said, voice deep, steady, no longer cold. "No one's ever gotten this close. The reward is yours, $1 million, as promised." Elena turned slowly to look at him. Her eyes didn't shine with excitement. They were calm, like still water, as if the offer held no real weight for her. "I don't want the money," she said. Her voice was light but firm. The entire yard seemed to freeze again. Aldrich frowned slightly, but he didn't interrupt. "I want a room," Elena continued. "Somewhere no one kicks me out of in the middle of the night. 2 meals a day. And to go to school." For the first time, her voice trembled, not from fear, but from hope. The kind so fragile it only needed one rejection to disappear forever. Aldrich looked at her for a long time. No quick answer, no grand reaction. Then, he exhaled slowly. "You'll live in the main house," he said. "We have an extra room. Tomorrow morning, we'll get you enrolled in school." Elena didn't cry, but her shoulders dropped, like she was breathing for the first time in years. That night, Elena slept in a real bed, the first one she could ever remember. The mattress was soft as clouds, the sheets smelled faintly of lavender. The pillow cradled her head like an embrace she'd never had. The room was simple, a small wooden desk, a lamp, a window looking out over the hills. But to her, it wasn't simple. It was a kingdom, a home. Outside her door, Rex curled up quietly, still and watchful. His ears twitched at every sound, not out of duty, but by choice. He didn't bark, didn't growl. He just stayed. Across the hall, General Aldrich sat alone on the edge of his bed. In his hands, the old photograph. Me and Sergeant, 1972. He stared at it for a long time, but this time, there was no weight in his gaze, no shadows. He whispered softly, as if speaking to something long gone. She didn't fix him. She just reminded him he was never broken. The next morning, Elena walked beside him, barefoot, her hair still tousled, but her eyes calm. Rex followed behind, no longer a ghost of trauma, but something new, a trust beginning to bloom. No one on the estate questioned it. No one doubted. They simply understood. A few days later, Elena was officially enrolled in school. She had a new backpack, her name written inside in blue ink. Each morning, Aldrich made coffee, read the paper, and packed a lunch bag with neat handwriting. "Elena, have a good day." Every afternoon, Rex waited at the gate. The moment she returned, his tail wagged like time had finally become kind. In town, people began to ask about the girl at the estate, about the dog that used to be a monster, now as gentle as grass. And when they heard the story, most just smiled and said, "Some things money can't buy." Because in the end, it wasn't about $1 million. It was about being seen, being safe, being believed, just once. And sometimes, just once, is all it takes to change everything. One spring morning, just as the last snow had melted off the hills, Elena stood by the window and saw General Aldrich outside in the yard. He held the old photograph in his hand, eyes fixed on something far away, not on a map, but somewhere deep inside memory. She stepped out quietly, careful not to disturb whatever sacred moment he was holding. "Are you going somewhere?" she asked. Aldrich stayed silent for a long while. Then he turned, and for once his gaze wasn't cold or guarded. It looked like he had been waiting for someone to ask him that question for a very long time. "There's a place I haven't gone back to in almost 50 years, he said. "Want to come with me?" Elena didn't ask where. She just nodded. The old Jeep rolled out of the estate. Rex sat in the back, his head out the window, tongue loose, ears catching the wind. They didn't talk much on the way, but the silence wasn't heavy. It felt necessary, as if the journey itself was doing the speaking. As the road turned to red dirt, the scenery changed. Crooked trees, sagging cabins, and, in the distance, an abandoned junkyard, overgrown with wild grass waist-high. Aldrich stopped the car but didn't shut it off. He stared into that lot, his breath slow and deep. "I found him here," he said, "Sergeant. Just a trembling little dog hiding between rusted cans and plastic bags. But when I held him, he stopped shaking." Elena looked at him but said nothing. She let him speak. "And I lost him, somewhere near here, too." His voice cracked at the end, and since then, I never came back. Elena stepped out of the car. Rex followed. They didn't go too close, just stood at the edge, where the wind blew the softest. She looked around, then pulled a small piece of fabric from her coat pocket. On it, stitched in neat blue thread, were the words, "Sergeant, you were loved." "I made this," Elena said, "not because I knew him, but because I know what it feels like to lose something you never got to say goodbye to. Aldridge looked at the cloth in her hand. His fingers trembled, not from age, but because someone at last had understood a grief he had never been able to speak out loud. They tied the fabric to a broken branch and planted it at the edge of the lot. No prayer, no ceremony, just a silence that meant everything. A way to say, "We came and we remember." Rex sat down beside them, quiet as always, but this time there was no tension in his body, only peace and closure. On the drive back, Aldrich finally said, "Thank you." Elena didn't answer right away, but after a while, she smiled. "I didn't save Rex," she said. "Rex saved me. And maybe all three of us saved each other." He didn't respond, but when they reached the estate gate, he opened the door for her, then did something he had never done with any other dog. He reached down and gently stroked Rex's head. That evening, in his study, the old photo, Me and Sargent, 1972, was placed beside a new one. Alina, Rex, and Aldridge standing in front of the hill behind the house. Below it, he wrote a quiet line in his own hand. "We returned to where it all began, but this time, I didn't lose anyone. This time, the past stayed behind, and the future walked beside me."